It's no secret that years ago, the mob controlled the construction unions, and by doing so, they controlled New York City. According to former Genovese member Vincent Fish Cafaro, with the unions behind us, we could shut down the city, or the country for that matter. We could make or break the construction industry. During the 1980s, 4 of the 5 families, excluding the Bonanno family, created what was called the Concrete Club. Any concrete work over $2 million would only be allowed to bid on by mob-controlled companies. In exchange, these companies had to pay tribute to the 4 families. They accomplished this by controlling the unions and the contractors, as well as the people who owned the companies. Gambino boss Paul Castellano controlled 282, the Teamsters local, and by placing one phone call, he was able to shut any job site down. One of the witnesses in the commission case was Stanley Sternchos, the president of Technical Concrete. He testified about receiving a $3.5 million contract with the Concrete Club's permission, and that he paid 2% of the contract to the Colombo family and $10,000 to Ralphie Scopo, who was not only a Colombo member, but the president of Local 6A, a cement and concrete workers union, and the point man for the bosses who made up the Concrete Club. Following the commission case, over the years, the government took steps in removing the mob from the construction unions. Bruce Mao, the former supervisor of the FBI's Gambino Squad C-16, the same squad who took down John Gotti, when he retired from the FBI, he became a union investigator and someone who removed organized crime members and associates from the unions. As for the mob's present involvement in construction, Mao stated, "The mob is getting back into construction, but it's all non-union. The union construction industry was the backbone of building this country. Union workers, besides union wages, benefited from the health programs, paid sick leave, pension and retirement accounts, and more importantly, the unions pushed for a safe work environment, whereas non-union workers, who are paid significant lower wages, and some may receive health benefits, have no one pushing to support them. On most non-union jobs, the trades work under more dangerous conditions, as anything goes, and a lot is overlooked. But the greatest contrast between union and non-union is the level of labor, skilled versus unskilled. And by no means am I suggesting the non-union workers are not skilled. Some of these guys are very skilled, but the unions offer classes with certificates to teach their workers various skills. This does not take place with non-union companies. In all honesty, they couldn't care less. Robert Bezalis was the vice president at the firm, which is a general contracting and construction company. What Bezalis was doing was inflating the bids of legitimate subcontractors and pushing those bids to mob-associated subcontractors, and doing so by providing the contractors with inside information about their competitors' bids. He also suggested that they boost their bid a little bit, which would include the money for kickbacks that were paid to the GEM Consulting Group, HMFL Management, and MVJ Inc., all associated to Gambino captain Frankie Camuso, who also owned Stellar Home Improvement and Master Masonry Inc., and who received over $700,000 in kickbacks from those contracts. The subcontractors that were awarded these projects was cited by both the city and federal authorities, which would be the DOB, Department of Buildings, and OSHA, cited for dangerous conditions at the job sites, which included 3 workers' deaths. In 2021, Bonanno boss Mikey Nose Mancuso met with Colombo captain Vinny Unions Ricciardo about bidding on a scaffolding contract. Since his release in April 2019, Mikey Knows insisted that Value Construction was his employer. That company has also been investigated by the Department of Buildings for unsafe work practices at job sites. Lawrence Wecker is a longtime Genovese associate going back to the days of Fat Tony Salerno. Wecker owned JM3 Construction, which I happen to be very familiar with, and I'll get more into in a moment. JM3 is also non-union and a carpentry and drywall company. The company would use its own workers and subcontractors to perform work on their projects. Some of the subcontractors even got beat out of their money. Meanwhile, Wecker was stealing millions. One subcontractor he used in particular was LNR Construction, which was owned by Lisa Rossi, who was an MWB certified company, which means she was a minority woman owner. She also happens to have a connection to West Side boss Barney Bellomo. In January 2021, a conversation took place where Wecker was told about a worker from his subcontractor, MGS, which was like a shell company, and this worker had broken his arm. The problem was they couldn't report the injury because, according to their payroll on that project, the worker didn't exist. Wecker instructed that the worker sign into the job site the following day and wear a long sleeve jacket to hide his injury. And at coffee time, which is typically around 9 a.m., the worker would leave and say he fell on the street going for coffee. Wecker and his associates were all indicted, and he pled guilty to enterprise corruption in exchange for a 6-year sentence. Let me quickly remind everyone to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you could do that as well. Also, the super thanks icon found beneath this video, which is put there for anyone who'd like to show appreciation for videos like this. Here's how I'm familiar with JM3 Construction. From 2019 till around early 2020, I was a senior safety supervisor for a company named Katera, and I was responsible for projects in White Plains, New York, and 2 projects in Connecticut. One of the Connecticut projects was The Smith, which was a high-rise building that had approximately 400 apartments and was located in Stamford, Connecticut. Our sheetrock guys on that project was JM3. Larry Wecker was always coming to the project. And what's funny is he would throw hints about being connected to people in conversations with me, and little did he know who he was talking to. He even gave me a bottle of liquor at Christmas time. One of the things that I handled was signing up new workers to the job site, making sure they had their OSHA cards, etc. About halfway through the project, one day I came into the office, and outside the office were over a dozen guys standing around. Someone told me they were waiting for me and that they were new workers who belonged to a company called MGS. So I get them all signed up, photocopy all their cards, and send them on their way. But then another wave of guys came in right after them, again, MGS workers. After sending them on their way, I asked one of my coworkers what type of work they did. And when he told me sheetrock, I figured we replaced JM3. But he said no, that they were JM3's subcontractor. And it wouldn't be the first subcontractor that they used on that project. Safety-wise, we had the most issues with JM3 and their subs. I remember one of their workers, a Spanish guy, who had numerous safety violations. One day was working on the edge of the building, about 5 stories up, and he wasn't wearing a harness, which means he wasn't tied off to the building, so if he slipped and fell, he's dying. I wind up removing him from the project. Another example of non-union work. The moral of this video is obviously the mob is now using non-union companies to once again monopolize the construction industry. So if you happen to be walking around New York, first and foremost, beware of falling objects and try not to stand too close to the buildings.